Chapter 37, Tantra and the World's Spine. What remains? Many real things. Witchcraft in the Western world, our indigenous goddess religion. In the East, in Tantra yoga, and to some degree in Taoism, survive some of the ancient matriarchal beliefs, techniques, and ritual worship. The female energy symbolism used by Tantrika, the vulva, caves, the earth, the community of women, can be traced back to the Paleolithic cave culture of 300,000 BC. Probably in ancient times, the special potency of Tantra was transmitted through a female line of power holders, a mysterious sect of women called the Vyatras. This female transmission of the tradition would account for the way in which female energy symbolism has survived in later religions, such as Tibetan Buddhism and the Brahmanical monastic Tantra, which are otherwise male-oriented in their dogma and not at all likely to have discovered the female principle for themselves. All such transmission was bound to have happened entirely outside the Hindu caste system, which depends on strict adherence to patriarchal rule for its existence. The Sanskrit word for caste, baha, means color. The Hindu concept of lawlessness originally meant the corruption of women, which was believed to lead to social chaos or caste mixture. So female tantric practitioners and transmitters would have been outcasts, pariah, and considered defiling as sexual partners. The Tantra was originally matriarchal, emerging from and belonging to the collective, classless early goddess society of the Dravidians. India was invaded circa 3000 BC by the lighter-skinned Aryans, or Indo-Europeans from the north, who went on to conquer the darker-skinned matriarchal agricultural Dravidians, ending at least 1,000 years of peaceful cultural development in southern India. The Aryans called themselves the people of the sky, inherently light, good, superior, and mighty. And the dark-skinned Dravids, they called the people of the earth and the serpent, inherently dark, evil, weak, inferior, etc. Danu, or Diti, the great goddess of the non-Aryan Dravids, was the cow goddess of India. She was undoubtedly related to the European goddess Danu, who gave her name to the Russian river Don, to the German Danube, and was the goddess of the Irish Tuatha De Danann. In Indian mythology, she was murdered by the god Indra, who overthrows the cities, who was the god of the invaders. Danu and her son Virta are first described as serpent demons, later as they lie dead as cow and calf. After Indra's murder of Danu, it was said that the cosmic waters flowed and were pregnant with her blood, giving birth to the sun and the new patriarchal order and its Brahmatic elite. Following this conquest over the ages, the male Aryans established the caste system, the most powerful among them, establishing themselves as the light Brahmin class at top. They placed tight restrictions on the woman in order to preserve their own racial purity, property line, and privilege through the patriarchal family. Purdah, women's imprisonment in the domestic sphere, and harems of wives were introduced later by the Muslims. The priestly Brahmin caste presided over the temples and ritual worship and laws of hierarchic social conduct. A Brahmin was considered pure, and to maintain his purity, he had to be protected from all other work. The next class, the warriors, were good for nothing but war. The work of society was carried out by the lower castes and by the untouchables, whose duty it was to empty the latrines and do the cleaning. These untouchables were the original dark-skinned matriarchal Dravidians, in the new patriarchal order assigned the role of housemaid or wife. The Brahmins were called twice-born, i.e., reborn out of the father. This is the aim of men's initiation rites all over the world, to incorporate the boy child into the world of the fathers while exercising all memory of the child's bond with the mother, a bond that is both erotic and mystical and thus a challenge to establish power. The Indian mystic Rabindranath Tagore spoke often of the Shakti power of the female. In our language, We call women's power over men Shakti. If Shakti disappears, the creative force in society is inhibited. The men lose their virility and become mechanical in their habits. He believed that the relation between the sexes in India under patriarchal religion was so distorted that the Shakti power could not function. Distinguished contemporary Tantrika have stated their belief that many of the miseries in modern India were caused by the world hatred that traditional Brahmin philosophers have instilled into the majority of the population. World hatred is designed to make the people accept miserable conditions and injustice as though they were functions of life itself, rather than specific results of specific man-made systems, such as the caste system in India. A good deal of India's suffering, like that of most of the world, results from Western imperialism and exploitation of native labor and resources. But such Indian problems as child marriage, dowry murders, and the ritual burning of widows, sati, cannot be blamed on modern European imperialism. The burning alive of so many young brides by husbands' families, dissatisfied with dowry payments, comes directly from patriarchal religion's devaluation of women into property. Dowry murder among lower caste Indians seems to have replaced the long-standing customs of sati, now illegal, which was practiced by wealthier upper classes. Why, in sati custom, was the immolation of the widow and her husband's funeral pyre? The Brahmin priesthood inherited all of the worldly property of the couple. Thus, no upper class wealth or land could ever pass into the hands of women. In the same way, the lands and goods of every European burned as heretic or witch during the 5 centuries of Inquisition passed directly into the hands of the Christian church. There was a lot of property, much of it still held by various denominations. Thus, does the patriarchal priesthood consolidate its earthly domains? Living traces of the ancient Aboriginal matriarchal people can still be found in India. The Persia of the south still do not farm the soil, but only burn wood and sow in the ashes. Persia women wear no veils and remain proud, sexually free, and strong. The matriarchal Nayar people of the Kerala in southern India enjoy high culture. No poverty, no prostitution. They practice gift exchange economy and are noted for their highly educated and active women. The Indian women's art of yogic massage, practiced on babes from 1 month and small children, originated in Kerala. It has been handed down through the generations of women. In this massage, the left hand is the dynamic energy, the right hand is the static energy. The exercises require great strength and sensitivity. The woman's hands joined with controlled breathing, communicating intelligence, dignity, freedom, power, and tenderness. A cosmic dance emerging from the rhythmic movement, a silent dialogue of love and union between mother and child, is designed to open the child's joints and release the sensuous power of life. This is done by all animal mothers, in fact, when they lick their newborn intensely immediately after birth. The sexual misers and misogynists of Buddhism, practicing a secret and dangerous self-indulgence in the form of spiritual nihilism, leading to institutional sadism, neglect, and hatred of their fellow creatures, are very similar to the patriarchal monastic Christian world of the European Middle Ages. Both are terrible worldviews, show the fallacy involved in the assertion of the nature of being, Brahma, or Christ God, which fails to take into account, first of all, that which is and its relation to human life. The nihilistic incapacity to say yes instead of no becomes the incapacity to recognize the female principle at the source of being. The Tantrika, on the other hand, teach that pleasure, vision, and ecstasy should be cultivated and used by all, not suppressed and damned. And not hoarded for the corrupt thrills of the few. Tantra proclaims that all things, the crimes and pains, as well as the joys and the benefits of life, are the active play of the female creative principle, the goddess of many forms, sexually penetrated by an invisible, indescribable, seminal male. The Tantrika use prolonged acts of ecstatic meditation in sexual union with a partner. They use liturgies, mantras, inner visualizations, yogic postures, and manipulation of the joined female and male energies. The goddess is perceived as the energy which makes the real outer and inner worlds. Complementary images of object and subject, spinning them out of the still center, as a spider spins the web from her body into the open space of being. In tantric thought, creation is time. The goddess, in her function as measurer, Maya, mens, moon, weaves the substance of events in time, just as she does in space. Time is the field of the goddess's play. While manifest is in form, she is also potential energy, the yet unrealized. This is the sense she is void. The void, because that contains everything specific that cannot be in itself specific. Yet this voidness is not Brahmanic abstraction of being, which is presented as somehow superior to the immersion in life. Brahmins preach that the psychic lunar body is to be transcended, that all formal consciousness is to be transcended and despised. Such an attitude carried about by real men in the position of dominating real life can be devastating. The void of the goddess is the real energy potential as the as yet unmanifest, and it is the ultimate relation or union of all manifest energies. Individual consciousness is released from the prison of dualism. Excuse me, there was a phone call. Individual consciousness is released from the prison of dualism through realizing that he is one with both principles. Tantra exists in the patriarchal world, however, and has for a long time. And so its doctrine has been accordingly modified. Today it believes that the ultimate still center is not the yoni of the female, but the self-originated lingam, male seed. Tantrikas say that the lingam conveys into all Kali's play activity the seed of being hidden beyond and within. Originally, though, there is no doubt that the still center of the universe spiral is, as it always was, the female yoni, the womb tomb of the Great Mother. And there is no doubt that the origin of energy in the spiraling Kundalini serpent that lives in the human spine, the sexual energy that powers flight. Many Westerners have turned to India for the study of Tantra and the Kundalini power because here the ancient techniques have been the most completely retained. Was there ever anything like them in the West, indigenous to Western people? The answer is yes, because the same goddess ruled all. The Dravidian Danu was the Irish Danu. The Indian Kali was the Irish Kalek, both portrayed sitting in the lotus posture. As William Irwin Thompson points out, the religion of the Upper Paleolithic is not simply the patriarchal superstitions of one tribe. It is the first universal religion, and its universality as an iconic system based upon the mysteries of menstruation and a lunar calendar cuts across cultures with different languages or toolkits. It is a universal religion whose range of influence, even in the Upper Perigodian, extends from Spain to Central Asia. By the time of the Neolithic, it had diffused throughout Africa and Eurasia. And by the Middle Neolithic, at least, it had everywhere developed techniques of ecstasy and illumination. Some of these techniques, especially related to shamanism and drug use, were kept alive by European paganism and witchcraft. Others can be reconstructed and revived through study of Kundalini yoga and tantric techniques, while remaining dubious of the patriarchal doctrines that have accumulated around them. The ancient holism must be reconstructed in our own minds, by our own minds, helped by historic knowledge and imagination. Remember snake and bird goddess worshipped as early as 6500 BC throughout the southeastern and central Europe. To the later patriarchal and Indo-European pastoral nomads, the earth was receptive great mother, corresponding to their active sky father. But the Neolithic agricultural matriarchal people had created the original maternal image composed of both water and air divinities, as well as earth. The snake and bird goddess, a three-part totality. Who was she? She was a three-part human brain. She was the world tree, the world spine, with the snake and the bird as the lower and upper symbols, where they appear as it understood that the arousal of Kundalini up the spine through the chakras connects them. In Mediterranean and European imagery, the divine child or green child was reborn energy created in this mystic magical process. This reborn energy was imagined as the cub of the wild bear mother, the baby snake or baby bird of the snake and bird goddess. The green child, reborn psychic energy, was not reared by the earth mother, but by the wild goddess Artemis. European paganism, like all others, always understood natural wildness as spiritual energy and the clue to illumination. Religious technique is not meant to tame this energy with moralism, but to channel it with creative understanding, which comes from the human neocortex. Variations of the snake and bird goddess appear everywhere, even in the places where we might not first recognize. Their universal similarities are not accidental, but the evidence of a universal idea, a universal recognition. In India and China, the world tree is the lotus. In Mexico and Central America, it was a jungle tree adopted with the quetzal bird. Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god of learning and peace, was imagined as a feathered serpent winding about a world tree. To teach a snake how to rise up the trunk to become a bird or plummeted serpent, a quetzalcoatl, is how yoga was expressed in ancient Mexico. The Mayan Kukulkan was the same. Both gods were Venus, the morning and evening star. In Egypt, in the religion of Isis and Osiris, Kundalini rising up the spine is symbolizing by raising the Djed pillar of Osiris. As Thompson notes, in Gnosticism also, the mind is called serpent-formed, and there was a universal recognition symbolized in all these snake, tree, bird iconographies that the human mind is not fully activated until the serpent energy is brought up the tree spine to flood the brain with illumination. The energy of the reptilian dream brain powers the soaring bird of the neocortex. If it doesn't, the neocortex functions only as an intellectual mechanism. All these symbols is a genetic memory of evolution, evidence of the ancient people's worldwide knowledge of yogic techniques. What is expressed in the lotus, the plumed serpent, or the staff of Osiris is the yogi's knowledge of the three brains of man, except that the techniques were developed by women, devotees of their own processes of the world's first and universal religion. It is women, remember, whose brains are evolutionarily structured to experience sexual and spiritual illumination as one. This is the snake and bird goddess meant, symbolized by the Thracian Maenads and all other legendary schools of priestesses in service to the goddess, who were guardians of these original yogic shamanic techniques. In pagan Scandinavia, shamanism, called Sajid, was originally practiced by the priestesses of Freya, and they wore magic bird costumes belonging to her. With these, they flew into other realities. And on the cavern ceiling of the Paleolithic Hall of Hieroglyphs at Pech Merle, France, are the images of three dancing women. Two are headless, one has a stylized head of a bird. She has been called by art historian Siegfried Gideon the earliest known representation of the fusion of a human being with an animal. The consistency and ancientness of these images of ecstatic dancing and the pulling of the serpentine biomystical energies up the human spine to achieve wings or illuminated consciousness argues for an intuitive knowledge of shamanic yoga techniques among our earliest ancestors. They were the techniques of the religion of the Great Mother. Thompson describes how these techniques were desecrated by the literalism of male priesthoods in service to secular power. In the yoga of Quetzalcoatl, the initiate spoke of opening the heart to the light of the sun, and what was meant by this was the opening of the chakras in the subtle body. The Aztec priests took the esoteric words literally, ripping out of the victim's heart and holding it up to the sun. Such a grotesque literalist misreading of esoteric spiritual texts is at the heart of fundamentalist fanaticism in all religions and of all holy wars. In ancient Mexico, the priests conducting mass heart-ripping sacrifices day after day were no longer in the service, needless to say, of individual spiritual illumination. They were trying to keep a giant patriarchal religious military machine running using buckets of blood as fuel, using the fearful resignation of the people as fuel. Bronze Age priesthoods throughout the Near East, the Mediterranean, and Europe entered upon the same gruesome project. As patriarchal governmental, military, and architectural systems grew into gigantic edifices of stone representing secular power, crazed priests called for the blood, sacrifice, castration in the name of the terrifying aspects of the Great Mother. They began to rule by fear alone, their own fears stimulating the fears of the multitudes. In atmospheres of mass fear, mass human sacrifice begins to make a kind of numbing sense. The real fear is stimulated by buildup of secular power, signalized by military power. In the hands of the human elite, people tend to respond to this by propitiating their gods. Among the European Celtic peoples, the Druid priesthood inherited the magic shamanic techniques, as well as the alphabet of the earlier goddess religion. They organized a spiritual technology that involved transcendent power for themselves alone, and so violated the cosmic law of the mother, which demands recycling on all levels, including the spiritual. Under the threat of Roman invasion and the breakup of their world to the Druid priests like the Aztecs, ending up performing more and more bloody mass sacrifice with less result. With the Indo-European infiltration of southern and central Europe circa 4000 BC, the snake and bird goddess begins to disappear. Her triple aspect disappears, her sky aspect disappears, and the mother is deprived of her ancient bisexual nature. As shamanism and bisexuality always go together, this means the disappearance of the shamanic techniques or their absorption into the new male dominance religion as secret power tools of a ruling elite. The snake tree bird goddess, the multidimensional she of water, earth, and air, becomes under the patriarchal Indo-Europeans the monodimensional gay, flat on her back, passive receptive of male seed. Earth Mother who never lies, who never flies, and the magic dies. During the long millennia of the Upper Paleolithic and Neolithic, our human ancestors, led by women, developed communal meditation techniques, which led to individual knowledge and experience of human psychic powers. With the agricultural buildup of the mid-Neolithic, increasingly complex settlement and specialization, these techniques and powers became increasingly the secret knowledge of a spiritual elite, a priesthood, just as the Neolithic increase of the material abundance gave rise to a ruling secular elite, a palace royalty. This combined royal priestly elite, armed with a new class of professional warriors, saw clearly how this communal wealth of humanity, the earthly abundance and the spinal spiritual knowledge, could be appropriated and exploited for the elite's advantage and toward the profitable enslavement of the masses of people. The Bronze Age represents this elite co-option of the communal female invention by the male few in power. Royalty, priests, warriors, and other specialists took the life technologies, arts, symbols, yogic shamanic techniques, and total agricultural wealth developed by the female collective by thousands of generations of human cooperation and exploration and absorbed them into the new patriarchal class system, with the king and priest on top, guarded by the professional warriors who began to systematically to visit the wrath of God, i.e., religion of plunder, rape, and conquest, on the masses of newly disinherited and powerless common people, i.e., those who had once lived quite happily together in common. War was declared on the human body with the emergence of patriarchal warrior societies in the Bronze Age. War was declared on the human body by declaring war on the female body, on the reproductive bodies of women, on the fertile body of Mother Earth, on the body of knowledge and techniques accumulated by women over the generations. Just as universal legends tell of males banding together to steal fire from the women who collectively discovered its magic uses, just as Pythagoras stole Maenad trance knowledge of rhythm and mathematical signs to invent an objective number system used as a logical weapon against the ancient female holism, just so the Bronze Age patriarchy stole the practical and spiritual inventions of the female sex and female god, turned them into power weapons which have been used ever since to make the few rich and the many impoverished, to give males a pathetic illusion of freedom via the enslavement of females, to give men the delusion of mental superiority via the total historical plundering of the female brain, to speak continuous slogans of progress and civilization while the entire human race is dragged evolutionarily backwards into the dominance submission systems of the primates. The magic sexual spiritual techniques of the snake and bird goddess still remain on earth in traces, even though she is forgotten. Even the co-opted goddess Athena of classical Greece, through proclaimed motherless and reborn from the forehead of Zeus the father, still wore the magic bird wings and the sacred snake coils of the ancient matriarchy, even though we no longer know what they mean. In the time falling bodies to take light, Thompson refers to the male horror of returning to the matriarchy and of returning to female communal order of the past. No matter how bad things get in our modern world, and how much worse can they get, men and women are still conditioned by all patriarchal political, religious, economic, and cultural institutions to believe that humanity is much better off now than we were in the dark and anonymous read female past. The Christian essayist and novelist C.S. Lewis has defined this male nightmare in fastidious words. You might add that in the hive and in the anthill, we see fully realized the two things that some of us most dread for our own species: the dominance of the female and the dominance of the collectivity. Forgetting, of course, that the hive makes honey and that female collective once made the world.